Hi, this is Rodrigo Flamenco from the Frame Freak Studios, and this is the Creative Hoster Show. And today we have a special invited here. Her name is Mina Roy. She's a freelance visual developer in New York, and she loves creating art surrounded like folklore, spirits, nature, pretty much like kind of cartoon saloon topics. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, can you tell us like how did you get started into art? Like, was it something that you were doing since you were a kid, or was something that you took later? And how was your path into it?
So I've done art for the majority of my life. However, I didn't recognize it as an actual occupation until I started looking at colleges. Originally, I was going to go into college for prosthetic design, such as like mechanical arms, mechanical eyes, anything along those lines that are uh, more science-based. And I happened to just stumble upon it when I was doing campus tours in the San Francisco area. And so I went to the Academy of Art, went on a tour. I was like, you know, what can it hurt? And I ended up deciding I'm going to go to and pursue art.
Nice. So, uh, how was your reaction when you realized like, hey, like I can live from this? Like I didn't need it.
Uh, I guess my reaction to it was that it was amazing, but by the same token, I also very much reflected on how could I not have realized this. Uh, just because you have your Disney films, you have your Miyazaki films, your children's books, you have all these sources of art everywhere, but it just never dawned on me as an actual occupation. So I've always more so wondered why I never realized about it. Uh, and I got very excited because I could see how many ways art can be implemented, into any sort of craft. But I guess shock would be the answer.
And uh, when you started like getting this into a career, what was your main goal of like did you have like this goal? Because I see many artists like they have this goal of entering into Disney or Pixar or something like that.
Mhm.
Did you have something like that in specific?
Uh, for the longest time, I didn't, just because I didn't realize that art was an actual job. So when I went to school, certainly there were a lot of people who had those specific goals. I didn't have those goals though, only because I wasn't as aware of all those opportunities. I didn't have an idea of, oh, if I say I want to go to Pixar, well, what am I going to do at Pixar? If I go to, do children's books, well, what exactly does that mean? And so a lot of my experience has been figuring out what do these job titles actually mean and what is it that I want to do. Um, and so I guess I've dabbled a lot in a lot of different types of artwork. And now I know I want to go into animated feature film and potentially do character design. However, I need to uh, hone in more on those experiences.
Great. Also, when I was doing art, I was doing it from a place that it was my way of relief stress.
Hmm.
Whenever I was like really stressed about something or really mad, like I would go into drawing something, things like that. Then I went into college doing graphic design because that's the only option that I had locally.
Hmm.
And I realized that art for me was more like a hobby and a way of taking off stress. And when I put it as a something like a career,
Hmm.
then that took away the purpose because he was getting the stress about doing art. Uh,
Yeah.
Friends who had gone through similar things.
Sorry, could you repeat that last part?
Have you found friends who have gone through similar things, or did you experience something similar?
I've definitely had a lot of friends go through that experience, and some of them have gone off and decided, oh, I'm going to switch majors, or even just went off not doing art completely just because they realized it was a hobby. Um, And so, yeah, I think that's common, and I think that's okay. So long as you find what it is that you enjoy, and that you want to continue pursuing, all of your past experiences can only build you into an even more educated and more understanding person. So I think it's a great thing.
And what is it about like folklore and spirits and things that captivate you the most in doing this type of stories?
I guess a lot of it has to do with just growing up with a lot of those types of themes. Um, Especially because my father is Caucasian and my mother is Korean, and so I'm getting a whole bunch of stories drawn in as a kid, but I'm also getting different types of stories, and seeing how they're constructed, seeing what elements are important, how they're just put together, and how great both, also how different both are communicated, I thought was fantastic. And with fairy tales and folklore, there's always a little bit of truth behind why they were made in the first place. It's kind of like just sparks my curiosity for them.
Great. Also, how would you describe your career, like when you got started into studying arts and things like that?
Mhm.
How was the process into getting uh, like full time into that?
It was insane. Just because I'm very much someone who, if possible, I like to plan as many things as I can of what my future is going to be like. This is the path I'm going to go. It's going to go just like this. If it doesn't go just like this, I have a backup plan. If that backup plan doesn't work, I've got another one and another one. That's very much my personality. And truthfully, right after graduating from the Academy of Art, I was thrown in. I'm like, okay, I've got this, and every single backup plan I've ever come up with, just I might as well have tossed them out because every single opportunity that was put in front of me were so different in terms of, who the client was, whether they were independent or if they belonged to a company, what they were asking for, also very different. Just all those all those factors that just came in, and they just come in at such random points. Um, it's like, for example, one of my first jobs after college was working for a company in Seattle, Washington called Eighth Nights. And I was in California at the time. And so like, how am I going to necessarily do this? Well, it turns out you would just Skype and share your screen and just paint live with a whole bunch of other people who were not in Washington either. And that was something I was like, oh, we can do this. Okay. And there's lots of different surprises that being in college alone, like college can teach you a lot of things, but they can't teach you experience uh, or they can't necessarily give you experience of what it's like to have different types of jobs in the industry. So to answer your question, I guess I was shocked, but it's also been a pleasant surprise every time.
And what made you take this decision on being a freelancer instead of like being on the team of some studio or something like that?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What what made you take the decision of being a freelancer
Mm,
instead of working directly with another company?
gotcha. Well, it's not necessarily that I don't want to work with another company. Certainly, if another company is willing to take me on and they have a really awesome project, I'm all for it. A lot of it comes into just loving the fact I get to work on multiple different types of projects, and each person, whether it's a huge team or an independent person, I just get enough creative challenges presented to me, and each one, I have to be clear and thorough about how I'm going to communicate these thoughts and ideas to this person to deliver for them. When you get put on something like like a games, you know, sometimes, well, truthfully, there's no actual like pro or con necessarily for, you know, whether I choose to do freelance or choose to do company. It's more of what's available and what people are willing to, if they're willing to give me the opportunity to help them with the project.
Great. And so I see that you design and do like a lot of creature design. What makes you go into this area?
I used to do a lot of creature designs just because uh, you would see movies and you would see books, and they would always have these really epic creatures that wouldn't necessarily be the primary focus, but you can still tell like they're part of the universe that this story is placed in. You know, you don't get distracted by these creatures. But by the same token, they also look so epic or so majestic or so, you know, magical or elegant in some way. You know, you can easily look at something and be like, oh man, I wish that was real, you know, or I wish I could pet this thing or ride this thing. And the concept of, man, if you could design something and have people believe that this thing is either real, like fool them for a moment that it's real, you know, that you could reach out and touch it, or you could go and like pet it or ride it, you know, any of those things. That to me, I just thought was such a really cool idea. And I pursued that for a while.
Nice. Also, as you mentioned, like technology has changed a lot of how we do things. I think that's especially true with art. Uh, like in my country, we didn't have much option in the beginning. Like when I was young and entering into college, and
Hmm.
it was like very square. Like you just have these fixated options, and then
Hmm.
once I realized, like, holy shit, like the internet has evolved. I can do more things. I pretty much
Hmm.
tossed away all the expectations that everybody had on me, and that creates problems even to now because many people don't understand like uh,
Hmm.
everything that we can do through this.
Yeah.
Put all that into your life and your work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot definitely has changed since, like, even within the past 5, 10 years, a lot has changed. I didn't quite catch your question, unfortunately, but I'm assuming it had to deal with the changing times and just how things are more accessible now. Is that correct?
Yeah, how has that impacted the way you do your work?
Ah, uh, truthfully, it means I can't be lazy because I don't have any excuses to give off of, oh, why am I not improving? Why am I not going off and doing these things? Or, you know, learning, like listening to podcasts of professionals, going on to online sites for education. There's truthfully no excuse I can give now. I can give an excuse, but if I give an excuse, it'll be that I'm lazy, you know, and that'll just be a fault in my own. And I have to own up to the fact of, you know, all these resources are available. And if they're so available, my work can potentially get better or improve, you know. I actually ended up even making a website, just compiling all these findings, just because that would encourage me even more to say, okay, I need something for education, or I need something for figuring out how to manage contracts for freelance, or anything at all. And I could just refer to my site. It's corarda.com, and uh, there I can just be like, okay, I've got at least 5 different options that can teach me how to do this thing, how to use this program, how to approach lighting when I'm painting, anything along those lines. And I try to pretty much make it where it's difficult for me to look in the mirror and give myself an excuse of why I'm not doing better.
Nice. Also, did your family support gave you support when you decided to go full into art?
Thankfully, yes, they did. Uh, they were definitely shocked a little bit since I went from, medical, pretty secure line of income type of job opportunities to, oh, I'm going to do art, which my parents also were like, what does this mean? Thankfully, they were very supportive, and they said, we know that we can trust you to figure it out, you know. Um, and they all the way through college and even up to today, they're still supportive.
And have you seen or meet people with who didn't have that kind of support? Uh, because there is this narrative that if you go into art, pretty much like you're not going to have anything to live with.
Mm.
I think since a long time. Have you found people uh, which their family didn't support them as much, and how did they, did they deal with that?
Definitely. I've definitely have a lot of friends and have had a lot of experiences meeting people whose families or parents, don't support them, which is really unfortunate. Um, but it's one of those. So in terms of how did they help themselves? I guess one part is, they did the same thing as me. They can't make excuses because there are these resources out there. In terms of the emotional support, though, I think in some cases we're really lucky about that, only because the artist community, especially online, like in Facebook and ArtStation, a lot of artists experience those struggles and they understand, oh, this is really tough. Even if for example, I came with support and it was still tough. I can only imagine what it's like for someone who didn't have that extra emotional support. But thankfully, because we have, friends and other artists who, recognize, yeah, this is really tough. And yeah, not everyone is going to recognize this as a real job. Um, it's great to at least know that our community of artists is so tight knit into wanting to support everyone else. Um, I have seen people who have chosen not to continue to pursue art just because they want that emotional support more from their family, or it just takes such an emotional toll on them that they'd rather pursue something else. Which again, it's unfortunate, but I think by the same token, if they truly want to pursue art, nothing's going to stop them from trying to pursue art. There's certainly a lot of free educational content. Even if you were to work at another job, say you later on became a doctor or whatever occupation, a florist, you can still find personal time to continue to improve your craft, and you can still continue to, participate in conversations or try to better yourself in some ways. Um, it's a whole matter of how much effort are you willing to put into this thing that truthfully, and this goes for any occupation that you want to pursue, you don't know the outcome of. But if you put in your effort and you put in, you know, you effort to improve, but additionally you also seek out other people to help you along. You don't just tackle this thing solo, you're more likely to succeed. Just because you're going to be pushing yourself, which is already tough, but then you're also going to have other people push you. And the better part, they're going to see your improvements. They're going to see where you started from, and then every single month, every single year, because life happens, but how you handle life and seeing how you evolve essentially is where a lot of the successes come from.
I definitely agree with you on that. Also, there was this book that I read called The Spark and the Grind. The author was one guy who was doing like a very corporate job in the beginning, like
Okay.
kind of the hustlers and things like that. Then the crisis in 2008 happened, and he was like screwed. And
Yeah.
then he became an artist. And something that he describes there in the book is that something that he saw in many artists is that they were like kind of flaky with their work ethic. Like they will just like wait up until inspiration got them to do something, and then pretty much they do nothing. And the vibe
Mhm.
that I got from you right now is someone who has their work ethic handled. Like I don't see you like being like that. And I do meet know some people who are like great artists, but they also are not like too reliable when it comes to the consistency of their work. How
Mm.
do you deal with that? And was that something that was uh, taught to you by your parents, like, or was something that you brought to yourself, like this work ethic?
Mm. Uh, it's funny you say that just because I definitely don't see myself in the similar lighting. I very much view myself in, you know, I could improve in so many ways with my work ethic, whether it be like my time management, whether it be how I organize my files, on when I'm making a Photoshop painting. So it's, I guess in terms of the drive itself to actually wanting to do art, sometimes it's, sometimes you wake up and you say, okay, do I feel like painting today? Not really, no. I kind of want to play my video game, watch a movie, read a comic book, but then you you look and you say, okay, well, these are things I want to do, and do I have, like, what is it that I need to do? So for example, with freelance, you have someone else who's relying on you to get the job done, or even personal projects. With personal projects, I tell I make sure that I have some sort of deadline set up, because if I don't meet to that deadline, then I'm letting myself down. In a way, that's the one person that I'm letting down, is myself. Um, does it always work? Sometimes it strays off a little bit, just because I'm like, it's okay, it was just one time. But you catch if you write these moments down and you keep a record of, here's how many times you've let yourself down, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. And through that, you hopefully continue to improve a little bit more and more. Yeah. Did that answer your question, I guess?
Yeah, still, I think even if you don't consider yourself like that hardworking, uh, by by what you just told me, you are doing so much for the many of the people that I know. So don't be too hard on yourself. You definitely are. Like you
Okay.
really have a work ethic. Uh, it's there some like when you see people starting to the art careers. What are the mistakes that you see that they are making a lot, and that they are not aware that they are making?
Oh, um, I guess a big one, and I don't quite have the best answer for this. I guess a big one would be, everyone knows it's good to get feedback and good to get reviews on your work. Um, but it's one thing to get that review and get that feedback, and then it's another thing to actually implement that feedback and those reviews into your work. Um, and additionally, communicating back to the person who gave you that feedback, saying, telling them thank you, or saying, no, I don't quite agree, but having a proper discussion about what it is that could be improved. Um, Oftentimes, and I catch myself doing this as well, oftentimes you would, if you were to share your work with someone, you generally are either feeling like a little bit proud of it, but by the same token are also looking to see how you can improve it. But then when you get that feedback, you also have to battle yourself with, like, this person's not attacking you. This person's not trying to say you're a terrible person and that you should just quit art. No, it's just literally, this is what they think could do better. And whether it's someone who has, studied and like practiced art for years, or is someone who's not even an artist, every single bit of feedback you get is important, because when your work gets put out to the world in some way, right? Whether it be through video games, through a gallery, anyway, you're not going to be there in person to say, hey, this is what my artwork is. You won't have that luxury. And so, and if you make a mistake on it, well, then everyone is probably going to see that mistake somewhere. And so it's, I guess a big part of it is just when you get feedback, write it down, but then, every now and then, like, see what is the actual core thing that is needing to improve, right? And then write that down somewhere, and just and don't just think about, okay, this only applies to this one painting. Now think about it for all of your paintings, your past and your future paintings. So that way you try to learn from that mistake, or from that that design that didn't read as well, and continue to, keep those things in mind when you're making more and more paintings. And another part, I guess, would be when you're receiving the feedback, a part of it is be clear about what it is that you want your feedback on. Because if you're looking and saying, okay, I'm just really focusing on, my polishing rendering skills, when I'm painting, then I'll be like, okay, cool. If you just come up and say, I want a critique, I won't entirely know what this is for, who's your audience, what do you hope to do with this painting. If you're wanting it for, and the most that I could give you back, if you were to come up and say, hey, I just want a critique and that's all I want, then oftentimes I'm not going to comment as much on your technical skills. I'm going to comment more on the content, what it is, the story, the idea that you made, and whether that reads. Because technical skill, you can easily just sit in front, continue to paint from life consistency until you develop those proper technical skills. Ideas, though, the content behind it, if that's reading, that's probably the most important thing. And having that understanding that the content should read from the get-go and be visually impacting in some way is, in my opinion, a lot tougher to hone down on. But if you can manage that, then you're just going to continue to get better.
Nice. Also, how would you use the internet in order to create that kind of super group and get that kind of critique? Because like if you use the internet and you just look critique outside, like there are many trolls who can like tear you down completely.
Mm-hmm.
How would you use it, or what would be your tips in order to build that on the internet in a safe, constructive way?
Well, one thing I don't do as much, and I see people do this every now and then, is I don't post my artwork into huge forum groups and say, hey, this is a work in progress, I'm just looking for feedback. And the only reason why I don't do that as much is because you're literally going to get a lot of attention, a lot of eyes, which is great. But if you're not, again, specifying what is it that you need the help with, what is it that you haven't done already to your work, or what is the actual goal behind it. If you don't highlight those things, people are just going to throw whatever ideas they have out at you of what they think could be better. And sometimes all you really need is like one really good constructive criticism or constructive critique, as opposed to getting a lot of feedback but not as high of a quality of a critique. And so, I oftentimes would look and say, okay, who do I have at least one artist buddy? Doesn't even have to be a painter. Do I have at least one artist buddy who is really good, at analyzing these things? And I'd be like, yeah, I do. And I go and I refer to him. And if, he's tied up or busy, then I try to refer to another friend or another friend. If you absolutely don't know anybody, you're like, I'm brand new and I want to get into this, but I don't know anyone at the top of my head, then I might, put out the forum idea and, you know, just post it out to the rest of the world so they can see. But then I would also consciously think, okay, out of everyone who's giving me feedback, who's giving me feedback that not only is a good idea, but also helps me, and they explain their reasonings as opposed to saying, I think it should be this, and just leaving it at that. You know, and if once you find that, then you can message the person, be like, hey, I really appreciate that critique you gave me. Is there by chance, could we continue this? Because I would like to improve. And hey, you've got a conversation started, you know, and you've got someone who you can potentially trust to continue to see your work.
Great advice. Uh, Also, what are your best tools online in order to distribute your work, or the ones that are your favorite when it comes to building community?
Uh, definitely Instagram. I like that. I like Instagram a lot just because it's a quick, easy way to see everyone's work, and just communicate with friends and people. I also enjoy Facebook, um, and that one's a little bit more on a little bit more directed towards the Facebook groups, I would say, rather than just posting on my own wall. Just because there's already a community built up, and you can continue to build your relation and your community with that. Um, Besides that, truthfully speaking, I just try to not only, you know, communicate, hey, here's my artwork, here's what I'm doing, this is what you guys should pay attention to it, but I also try to be an active part in other people's um, lives as well, just because so for example, say there's an artist I really like, and I look and say, this person is great, you know, I would go and I would show my support by either, you know, pushing that like button or commenting on there, just because like it, not only do I get to communicate with one of the few artists I really enjoy, but by the same token, it also in a weird way makes people consciously aware, oh, here's this person, but then here's all these other people. Oh wait, I keep seeing this particular name just kind of pop up every now and then. I wonder if they're an artist, you know. And I've seen other people do this too, where it's like I would look and be like, I really like these few artists, and kind of trailing along in all of them, just because we like hanging close to our friends. And so I'm like, I wonder, oh my gosh, this person's artwork is amazing. And I've got another one on the list of awesome people to watch. It's not so much a tactic of how to build community, but just more of being parts of communities that you want to be part of, I would say, and not necessarily taking the how do I build my numbers so much, but more how do I build a great experience with other people. I value that more so than quantity.
Awesome. Also, we found your artwork through CNX. Last year was our first event, and it was a lot for us to take on. What would be your tips for newcomers to this type of events, and how would you take the most out of one?
So I was hoping, but I did not actually get to go to DesignerCon. I have, however, been to CTN multiple times, both as an attendee and as a booth holder, an exhibitor. So I can speak for that expo. For CTN, whatever you do, make sure that you bring your notebook, your pens or pencils, whatever it is you can to write with, and then bring a business card. And maybe also bring your portfolio. Just those 4 things alone, and you're already on a great start. Just because if say you're an attendee, there are so many amazing people at CTN every single year. You know, either they are the people who are in the artist alleys, or there are people who are hosting panels, you know, or talks. Everyone is really willing to give all sorts of great information in terms of how to improve or how you can continue to develop yourself both as a person and your artistic abilities, when pursuing whatever field you want to pursue. And so that's why the notebook and the piece of paper. You could try to type it all in on your phone, right? But if you run into someone like me, I don't always charge my phone. So, oh, hey, let's exchange numbers. Oh, my phone died. Or, oh man, there's a really great panel. I'm just gonna try to video record it, which video recording I don't believe is allowed. You're like, I'm just gonna try to video record it. You're either kicked out or your phone died halfway through, and you're just like, well, shoot, what can I do now? Piece of paper, it's always with you. Pen, it's always with you. If you need to, have 2 or 3 extra pens in case the pen dies. Business card, only if business cards are great just because a lot of people at CTN network with each other. My very first year going to CTN, it was, how did I describe it before? It was like Christmas for like 3 days. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's one favorite artist, there's another favorite artist. Oh my gosh, there's a legendary famous person over there. And then you're also surrounded by a lot of students or a lot of aspiring artists. And you're like, oh man, I want to do that too. Oh man, we should totally like hook up and see what other artwork we can make. So business cards, always great. The second time I went, after making those connections and following up with those connections, not just handing the business card and then hoping, oh, hopefully they'll keep me in mind. No, build that communication, build that relationship, because that's, in short, networking is relationship building. That's all it is. It's like, does this person look awesome? Do you want to be friends with this person? Cool. That's what it is for the most part. Second year was, because of that, is more like a family reunion than it is like Christmas. Because you're still shocked and amazed by where everyone is, but you have a little history, you have a little bit of context of who each person is, where they were the last time you saw them, and how they continue to improve, as well as yourself. Where were you the last time you saw them? Definitely, and also I would recommend also bringing your portfolio, just because, this is a network of people. Everyone's really excited about the event, about seeing everyone, but they're also really curious. Oh, you're an artist or you're an animator. So do you have any work on you? What does it want to do? I want to see. And if you don't have that necessarily available, you're like, oh, well, you have just the business card to refer back to, which is still great, but it's just an extra boost. That, and also if you have a portfolio, you can get additional feedback on areas that you think could improve.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Everybody told me that last year was like really full of people compared to other previous years. So that added to the craziness that we had to deal with in our first time there. Definitely, I agree with you. Like, I'm pretty sure that there were many moments where maybe we were next to somebody really important and we didn't even knew.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm really sure that happened a lot because it was just too much to take in. Also, if you have to start from, let's say you wake up tomorrow in another dimension where nobody knows you, you have to start from zero, but you still have all your knowledge and you have $500 in your pocket. What will you do in order to get started and get this point as fast as possible?
So I still have my knowledge, and I'm assuming I still have my artistic abilities.
Yes.
And I don't know, do I still have my portfolio, or is it all like swept away clean?
Swept away.
Okay, swept away clean. Dang. Alternative dimension. It's a tough question just because that could go in so many directions. But I guess if I have all of my knowledge still, and I have $500, then chances are probably the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find a job. just so I can continue to build on something. But then after that, I'm going to see, you know, is there a place where artists gather, right? Just so that way I can continue to have some sort of community. Or actually even better, are there any classes for art that are still like available in this particular universe, right? Just because one, I'm going to be continuously learning, so that just boosts my skills up even higher, right? Two, I'm assuming the class is going to have students or at least an instructor, and that's going to boost, a bit of awareness without me necessarily saying, "Hey, look at my artwork." It's like, no, I'm here to learn. And that way, also, if there's someone who's even better, then I've got a drive. I've got someone to actually look up to more so. And then three, focus on, okay, is the thing that I want to do with my art, is that an actual occupation in this world? Assuming that it is or isn't. And then saying, okay, what is it that I want to do with my art? And what are ways I think, just reverse engineering here, what are ways I think are the best ways for me to get to this job? And then thirdly, you sit down and you start painting, you start working at it, and you say, okay, I've got, I don't know, an 8-hour job already because I need to live. You're like, okay, well, if I spend 8 hours at a day job, I spend 8 hours sleeping, then shoot, there's 24 hours in a day. I've still got 8 hours left. Sure, it might include, a little bit of showering, a little bit of like eating meals, but somewhere in there, you've still got just as much time to tackle the things that you want to do. It's just in terms of how do you want to prioritize your tasks, and how well can you manage yourself to reach for your goals, reach for those things you want. And having something like that class setting where you have other artists also kind of in this similar position, maybe a little bit better, right? Maybe they've already been through this and they already have things figured out. You can draw from that and be like, hey, I'm really struggling here. How do you have any tips? And then you reach out to more people, and then you just continue to build up on the areas where you can improve. This is all, of course, in a universe where we're assuming a bunch of these things are available, but fingers crossed.
Yes. Is there any last tip or any recommendation that you would like to give to people who want to follow this path that we haven't talked about?
Oh gosh, there's always so many tips. The biggest tip I would say is recognize what it is that you want to do. If there's something that you want to do, recognize what it is, right? Like write it in big letters or something. Or even if the goal is saying like, I don't know, I just like drawing. Even if that's all you have to say, just put that down somewhere, and on top of that, recognize this is gonna be hard because any good thing in life is hard to get, right? Maybe it may seem easy later down the road because you've already gone through all those hurdles, right? But every good thing always comes from a harder location or a harder place. And you look and say, okay, it's really hard, but it can only get better. It can only improve. And if it goes like, hey, I'm getting better, and then you either go for a really steep down or you go like a little bit gradually down, you look and you're like, okay, we've had a down. Am I, still wanting to do this thing? Yes. Am I still functionally able to do this thing? Right? Like, do I still have my hands or my legs in? Like, yeah. If I don't, I'd say, okay, then let me think about it some more. Like maybe I can paint with my feet. But you highlight, okay, what is it that I want to do? And you recognize if it's going to be a tough challenge, right? If it's really, really difficult, where I might any sort of problems, medical problems, am I still willing to do this thing? Then you look and say, Okay, either yes or probably not. Then you're just learning about yourself. If you do run into these things and say, I still love art, but I don't know if I want to pursue it as a living, right? Just because, for whatever reason, then you look and say, that's okay. That doesn't mean that, you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean that you have to give up on art completely. Any experience you gain while you're on this earth is only going to be a benefit to you in the future. It may not seem like it now, but it will benefit you in some way. A lot of people have told me, oh man, I think I started at too old of an age, or, oh man, these younger people are so much better than me. And I'm like, well, shoot, yeah. That's good. Like, the world is full of billions of people and everyone has some sort of different experience. How are you going to, though, get better? Like, we can focus on everybody else, but you yourself, where you are in life, what experiences have you had that made you who you are today? And what can we do to make those to make you reach your goals, your dreams, your eventual end point? So a great example I like referring to sometimes is actually my sister, because my sister, she's a fantastic writer. But she went into school for chemistry and, at a great school and had like upgrades and everything. And you're just like, man, this person's really good at science and good at chemistry. And she's looked at one day and she's like, I kind of want to write fantasy though, like fantasy novels. And which my mom and my whole family was just like, yes, because even though she's great at it, we knew she really loves doing this stuff in her free time on her side. Any split second she had, she would always try to write. And so we're just like, yes, this makes perfect sense. You should totally do this thing. But because of that, now whenever like she sends me stories and I'm reading them, oh, there's a bit of twist from the normal sort of, magical fantasy writing that I read in books as opposed to her writing, because her writing always tries to put in her chemistry knowledge, tries to define the laws of the universe a little bit more solidly so that you can not only say, oh, this is a rule in this universe, but you're like, this might actually work. Oh my gosh, I could be a wizard, and you get a little bit more excited for it because she has a different experience. She has that chemistry background that she can now add into her fantasy writing. And you look at anyone, you look at Terrell Whitlatch, wonderful person. She has a lot of animal anatomy background knowledge, and because of that, she can input that into her creature designs. Any experience one, even if you say, oh man, I worked at Macy's, like where I'm a barista at Starbucks, it's still a really awesome experience. You're still meeting a lot of people. You're still having, like, you're literally watching people have all sorts of interaction, lots of different stories just floating around. But then also, if you ever get put in a situation where you have to design a character who is either at a retail or who's a barista, or someone, not even necessarily those specific jobs, but just someone who is kind of close to that mindset of, oh man, I have to do a million tasks, but I got to get it all done to deliver what, is a drink to another person. You're already so much more informed than someone who has not had that experience. And so you're more likely to create something believable, and something that might impact someone more just because you've already had that experience and you can put that experience into your work. So I guess the big part is don't undervalue yourself or your experiences. Recognize there's always opportunity, even if it seems like there isn't, there's always some sort of opportunity just based on perspective of how you view things. And when in doubt, keep drawing and reach out to people who do support you.
Nice. Also, if people want to find you and your work, which would be the best ways to find you on the internet?
The best way, truthfully, is just to go to my website. I keep my website updated all the time with social medias of what's active and not. So that would be www.animator, minaroy.com. That just spells my name, and I try to keep it simple.
Nice. Thanks a lot for giving us your time and all your knowledge. I know that you're a busy person, so I really appreciate that you have taken the time to share all this with us.
Thank you so much for the invite. The pleasure's all mine.
So everybody else, I hope that you have enjoyed this interview, and if you have, please like it in the video below and share it with all your friends so we can spread the knowledge. Until next time.
Bye.